A German Panzer commander screams into his radio, but the British hear it first, before his own tanks do. France, June 1944. 3 weeks past D-Day. The Wehrmacht owns the airwaves. Encrypted. Unbreakable. Or so they think. A farmhouse in Curran smolders. British radio operators huddle in the cellar, headsets clamped tight. Static hisses. Then, a voice. German. Crystal clear. Panzer Abteilung, advance to grid. The operator's hand freezes. His lieutenant leans in, pulse hammering. They are listening to enemy orders. Live. Unencrypted. Raw. But here's the kicker. The German commander hasn't finished transmitting yet. His own tanks haven't received the message. The Allies are hearing the future. Rewind. 3 months earlier. Bletchley Park. Britain's code-breaking fortress. Alan Turing's domain. But this isn't about Enigma. A young signals officer, Lieutenant James Calloway, stumbles on something else. Something no one expected. Is monitoring German tank radio traffic. Standard procedure. Except tonight, the patterns shift. He leans forward, adjusting the dials. The frequency spectrum glows green on his oscilloscope. German voices. Clear as church bells. No encryption. Impossible. He rips off his headset. Checks the equipment. Recalibrates. Puts it back on. Still there. Hauptmann Dietrich. Pull your Tigers back 300 meters. Artillery incoming. Calloway's blood runs cold. He glances at the clock. 23:47 hours. He sprints down the corridor. Bursts into his commanding officer's quarters. Major Harding looks up from his tea, annoyed. Sir, the Germans, they are broadcasting in the clay. Harding sets down his cup. Don't be ridiculous. I'm hearing tank commanders. Giving orders. No cipher. Harding stands. Follows Calloway back to the radio room. He listens for 30 seconds. His face goes white. Get me Churchill's office. Now. But there's a problem. A massive one. The transmissions are intermittent. Random. Like ghosts flickering in and out of existence. Sometimes hours of crystal-clear German tactical chatter. Then nothing. Static. Silence. The pattern makes no sense. Calloway spends the next week glued to his station, mapping the anomaly, charting when it happens. Where? Sleep becomes a luxury he can't afford. His eyes burn. Coffee stains his uniform. Other officers whisper. Calloway's losing it. Chasing phantoms. But he knows what he heard. Then he sees it. The clear transmissions only occur during specific atmospheric conditions. Temperature inversions. Humidity thresholds. Weather fronts colliding over the English Channel. Something about the physics, the way radio waves bounce off layers of cold and warm air, is creating a freak propagation effect. A skywave skip. German tank radios, designed for short-range line-of-sight communication, are accidentally broadcasting hundreds of miles. Their signals ricochet off the ionosphere, slam back to Earth, and land straight in British receivers. But here's the beautiful part, the twisted irony that makes Calloway smile for the first time in months. The German receivers aren't picking it up. Their own radios are too close. Wrong angle. The skywave shoots right over them. But the British? Positioned across the channel at the perfect distance. Front row seats. Calloway writes a 17-page report. Technical. Dense. Filled with propagation charts and frequency analysis. He hands it to Major Harding at 4 o'clock hours. Harding reads it twice. Then picks up the secure telephone. This goes to the top. Immediately. Within 72 hours, the report lands on Winston Churchill's desk. The Prime Minister reads it while smoking his morning cigar. His eyes narrow. He summons his scientific advisor, Professor Reginald Jones. Britain's wizard of wireless warfare. Is this real? Churchill growls. Jones studies the data, runs calculations, consults with meteorologists. Prime Minister, it's not just real. It's repeatable, predictable. We can weaponize this. Churchill leans back. Ash tumble from his cigar. Then make it happen. I want every German whisper caught in our net. You're a German Panzer commander. June 12, 1944. Your Tiger tanks rumble through Norman hedgerows, engines growling like caged beasts. You key your radio. Lieutenant Becker, move your platoon to the crossroads. Hold until dawn. Static crackles. You wait for confirmation. Nothing. You transmit again. Becker. Acknowledge. Received. Hauptmann. Good. Your lieutenant heard you. Orders delivered. Except 50 miles away, a British intelligence officer just wrote down every word. 5 minutes before Becker did. Welcome to wireless warfare's strangest glitch. By late May, Calloway's discovery climbs the chain of command. Churchill's war cabinet receives the briefing. Skepticism fills the room. Weather-dependent eavesdropping. An admiral scoffs. Sounds like witchcraft. But Field Marshal Montgomery sees it differently. Gentlemen, if we can predict when this phenomenon occurs, if we can listen to German tank commanders coordinating in real time, we own the battlefield. He turns to Calloway. Can you forecast it? Calloway nods. With meteorological data, yes, sir. 48 hours in advance. Montgomery smiles. It's not a kind smile. Then we're going to do something extraordinary. Operation Phantom goes live June 15th. 36 mobile radio stations deployed across southern England, each staffed with German-speaking intelligence officers. Meteorologists work around the clock, predicting atmospheric windows. The stations are disguised. Farmhouses, coastal cottages. One operates from a converted fish processing plant in Portsmouth. When conditions align, the stations power up. Headsets on, receivers tuned to German tank frequencies. And they listen. The personnel are handpicked, fluent German speakers. Many are refugees, Austrian Jews, Czech dissidents, German communists who fled the Rhine. They know the language, the slang, the regional dialects. One operator, Sarah Winters, is a Cambridge linguistics graduate, 23 years old. She can identify German units by accent alone. Bavarian tankers sound different from Prussians. SS officers speak with clip precision. Wehrmacht grunts curse in creative dialects. She catalogs them all, creates voice profiles, tracks individual commanders across weeks of intercepts. She begins to recognize them. Hauptmann Dietrich, the cautious one. Lieutenant Fogel, young, eager, terrified. Obersturmführer Kreutz, cold, professional, brutal. They become real to her. Human. Not just voices and static. And that's when the nightmares start. June 18th, dawn breaks over Villers-Bocage. A British armored column pushes through the village. Cromwell tanks, infantry and half-tracks. Confident. Maybe too confident. In the Portsmouth listening station, Sarah Winters hears something that stops her breath. SS Obersturmführer Whitman to all units. British column spotted. Preparing ambush. 6 Tigers. Concealed position. She knows that name. Michael Whitman, the ghost of the Eastern Front. 138 confirmed kills. Her hands shake as she grabs the scrambler phone. Contact forward command. Emergency intercept. British armor walking into a trap. The message races through military channels. Encrypted. Urgent. Reaches the column commander, Major Aidan Clark. 12 minutes later. He reads the decoded warning. Looks at his map. The route ahead curves through narrow streets. Perfect kill zone. His hand hovers over the radio transmitter. If he changes course, the Germans might suspect a leak. Might realize their communications are compromised. The entire intelligence operation, blown. But if he doesn't, his gunner watches him. So, Clark makes the call. All units, halt. Reverse course. New orders incoming. The column grinds to a stop. Backs up. Takes an alternate route. In the village ahead, Michael Whitman waits in his Tiger. Engine idling. 88mm gun loaded. Armor sloped like a predator's crouch. The British never arrive. Whitman frowns. Checks his watch. Keys his radio. Where is the enemy column? Silence from his reconnaissance units. He doesn't know it yet, but his voice just bounced off the stratosphere. Sarah Winters is transcribing every word in real time. The Ghost War has begun. For 3 weeks, Phantom delivers miracles. German counterattacks predicted hours before they launch. Tank deployments tracked in real time. Artillery coordinates overheard and neutralized. Allied casualties in Normandy, already brutal, drop by 15% in radioactive zones. But secrecy is everything. Absolute. Total. Montgomery issues standing orders. Never act on intercepts alone. Always create cover stories. Fabricate reconnaissance reports. Stage fake aerial sightings. Make it look like luck. Like guesswork. Like anything except the truth. Because the moment the Germans realize their radios are betraying them, it's over. The pressure on Phantom Air personnel is crushing. They work 12-hour shifts. Sometimes longer when atmospheric conditions hold. Headsets clamped tight. Pencils flying across notebooks. German voices flooding their ears like a toxic river. Some operators crack. Transfer out. Can't handle the weight. Because they're not just gathering intelligence. They are marking men for death. Sarah Winters develops a ritual. After each shift, she walks to the harbor. Watches the waves. Tries to wash the voices from her mind. But they follow her. Into sleep. Into dreams. She hears Hauptmann Dietrich joking with his crew. Lieutenant Fogel talking about his sister in Dresden. Obersturmführer Kreutz ordering summary executions of prisoners. They are monsters and men. Sometimes both. Sometimes neither. And she's listening to them die. June 29th, rain hammers Normandy. The atmospheric conditions are perfect. Radio skips strong and stable. Calloway's main listening post intercepts a transmission that makes his stomach drop. General Major von Funk to all Panzer units. Full assault. Tomorrow. 4 o'clock hours. Objective. Split Allied beachhead. Is hearing the German master plan. The entire offensive. Unit by unit. Timing. Routes. Objectives. 20 hours before it happens. The intelligence reaches Eisenhower by midnight. He spreads the maps across his desk. Studies the intercepts. They're throwing everything at us. If this is accurate, his chief of staff nods. We can position our armor exactly where they'll hit. Turn their offensive into a slaughter. Eisenhower's jaw tightens. The weight of command settles on his shoulders like iron chains. Do it, but make it look random. Rotate patrols. Standard procedure. Nothing unusual. He pauses. Looks at the intercept transcripts. German voices translated into English. Plans laid bare. And pray to God they never figure out how we're doing this. July 30th, 4 o'clock hours. German panzers surge forward through the pre-dawn darkness. Confident. Coordinated. This is their moment. The offensive has been planned for weeks. Every unit knows its role. Every commander trusts the element of surprise. They crest a ridge, and British anti-tank guns erupt from concealed positions. Perfectly placed. Perfectly angled. The first Tiger explodes. Its turret flips through the air like a steel coin. Lands 20 meters away. Panthers burn. Mark IVs brew up. The offensive shatters in 90 minutes. In his command Tiger, Hauptmann Erich Hartmann screams into his radio. How did they know? How? No answer. Just the thunder of shell fire. His driver yells, "We're hit." The Tiger shudders. Smoke pours through the hatches. Hartmann grabs the escape hatch. Burns his hand on superheated metal. They bail out. Run for the tree line. British machine guns chatter. Hartmann's gunner goes down. His loader stumbles. Falls. Hartmann keeps running. Lungs burning. The world reduced to survival. In Portsmouth, Sarah Winters removes her headset. Her hands shake. She just listened to Hartmann's voice crack. Listened to men die. Men whose death warrant she helped sign. The moral weight settles on her shoulders like wet concrete. She walks to the bathroom. Vomits. Washes her face. Looks in the mirror. The woman staring back is a stranger. But there's no time for doubt. No time for guilt. Because the Germans are starting to notice. July 5th, Wehrmacht High Command Conference. Somewhere in northern France. Maps covered in red circles. Failed offensives. Anticipated ambushes. Uncanny Allied positioning. General Oberst Heinrich Eberbach stabs a finger at the reports. Either they have spies in every Panzer battalion, or he trails off. The implication hangs in the air like cordite smoke. Check the radios. All of them. Full signals intelligence review. German engineers tear apart their radio systems. Looking for compromises. Traitors. Leaks. They inspect every Fu-5 and Fu-8 radio set. Test frequencies. Scan for bugs. Interrogate operators. They find nothing. Because the leak isn't in the radios. It's in the sky itself. But paranoia spreads through German units like poison. Commanders second-guess themselves. Trust erodes. Some stop using radios altogether. Resort to motorcycle couriers, which slows their response times. Makes coordination harder. The Allies gain another advantage without firing a shot. But then, something shifts. July 12th. The atmospheric conditions are perfect. Calloway's team powers up, ready for another intelligence windfall. Static. Pew static. He adjusts frequencies. Checks equipment. Nothing. For 6 hours, they scan every German tank frequency. Silence. Then a transmission breaks through. A German radio operator, speaking slowly, deliberately. This is a test. If British intelligence is listening, you will hear this. Calloway's blood turns to ice. We know you're there. We don't know how, but we know. The transmission ends. The room erupts in chaos. Officers shouting. Should they respond? Maintain silence. Shut down the operation. Major Harding makes the call. Radio silence. Complete blackout. They are fishing. Don't take the bait. But the damage is done. Within 48 hours, German tank units switched to new communication protocols. Tighter procedures. Abbreviated codes. Reduced transmission times. They implement challenge response authentication. Change frequencies more often. Use buried landlines where possible. The crystal-clear intercepts, the tactical gift from the gods, start drying up. Not gone, but degraded. Fragmentary. Harder to exploit. Phantom Ear's golden age lasts exactly 29 days. But here's what the Germans never discover: the exact mechanism. The atmospheric propagation. The physics of their betrayal. They know there's a leak. They just don't know it's the sky itself. So they overcompensate. Implement security measures that slow them down. Make coordination harder. Create friction in their command structure. The Allies exploit this too. Feed false intelligence. Stage fake radio chatter. Make the Germans chase ghosts. Phantom Ear evolves. Adapts. Becomes psychological warfare. But in those 29 days, it saves thousands of Allied lives. Turns the tide of a dozen engagements. Gives commanders an edge that shouldn't exist. August 1944. The Allies break out from Normandy. Operation Cobra smashes through German lines. Paris falls. The Germans retreat. Phantom Ear continues operating. But the returns diminish. German radio discipline improves. The atmospheric windows become less reliable. By September, the operation transitions to pure signals intelligence. Standard radio monitoring. The magic is gone. The mobile listening post dismantle. Personnel transfer to new assignments. Sarah Winters returns to civilian life, the memories locked in classified files. She never speaks about it. Not to family. Not to friends. The Official Secrets Act binds her like chains. For 40 years, she keeps the secret. The voices haunt her. German commanders screaming. Dying. Begging for ammunition that never comes. She wonders if any of them survived the war. Wonders if they are out there, old men now, telling their grandchildren about the uncanny British luck in Normandy. Calloway receives a quiet commendation. No medals. No public recognition. Secrecy survives the war. He returns to Cambridge. Teaches physics. Publishes papers on radio propagation. Never mentions Phantom A. But sometimes, late at night, he tunes an old radio to the shortwave bands. Listens to the static. The voices from across the world, bouncing through the atmosphere. And remembers. Decades later, 1997, the operation is finally declassified. A footnote in Signals intelligence history. Overshadowed by Enigma. By Ultra. By the famous code-breaking triumphs. The documents are released. Terse. Technical. Stripped of humanity. No mention of Sarah Winters' nightmares. Calloway's obsession. The moral weight carried by dozens of operators who heard men die. Just frequencies. Intercept counts. Tactical outcomes. The official history is bloodless. Sterile. Safe. But veterans remember. British tank commanders who survived ambushes that never came. German officers who swore the Allies had supernatural luck. The ghost frequency. The voice in the air that whispered futures. Here's what haunts Sarah Winters in her old age. She's 91 now, living in a cottage in Cornwall. She remembers the voices. Young men, German tank commanders. Scared, professional, human. She heard them laugh, heard them curse, heard them call for their mothers when shells found them. And she wonders, did they ever know? Did Hauptmann Hartmann, burning in his Tiger outside Caen, realize his own radio betrayed him? That his voice traveled through the clouds, landed in enemy ears, sealed his fate? Or did he die thinking it was just bad luck? One day in 2003, she receives a letter, forwarded through the Ministry of Defense. From Germany. It's from a man named Klaus Hartmann, son of Hauptmann Erich Hartmann. My father survived the war, he writes. He spoke often of Normandy, the strange Allied prescience. He believed there was a spy in his unit. Spent years trying to find out who. Sarah's hands shake as she reads. He never knew. Died in 1987, still wondering. I'm writing because the files were declassified. I read about Operation Phantom A, about the atmospheric propagation, the skywave intercepts. The letter continues. I wanted you to know, he wasn't a monster. He hated the Nazis, joined the Wehrmacht before the war, couldn't escape, did his duty, tried to survive. Like everyone. Sarah sets down the letter, stays out the window at the gray Atlantic. She wants to feel vindicated, absolved, but all she feels is tired. Because war doesn't care about monsters or men. It devours both equally. The cruelty of Phantom A isn't just tactical. It's existential. Your words travel faster to your enemy than your ally. Your commands doom you before they save you. Technology turns traitor. Physics becomes the spy. And some way, across the electromagnetic spectrum, your enemy listens. Smiling. Modern warfare learned the lesson. Encryption, frequency hopping, spread spectrum, digital security. The U.S. military develops SIGINT, frequency hopping radios that change channels 50 times per second. Impossible to intercept. Impossible to jam. The NSA creates encryption protocols that would take supercomputers centuries to break. But on quiet nights, radio operators still joke about skywave ghosts. Signals that travel too far. Voices in the static. Because the atmosphere doesn't care about sides. It doesn't care about war. It just bends the light, bounces the waves. And sometimes, just sometimes, it whispers secrets to those who listen. The last recorded Phantom A intercept occurs August 19, 1944. A German tank commander retreating toward the Rhine. His voice crackles through the Portsmouth receiver one final time. This is Lieutenant Fogel. If anyone hears this, tell them we fought. Tell them we. Static swallows the rest. Sarah Winters writes it down, files the report, removes her headset. She never learns what happened to Fogel, whether he made it home, whether he survived the war. His voice just vanished into the electromagnetic void, like all the others. Ghosts in the machine. Years later, a German military historian identifies Fogel from declassified records. Peter Fogel, 24 years old, killed by Allied fighter bombers during the retreat from France. August 20th, 1944. One day after his final transmission. His family never knew about that last message. Never knew his voice traveled across the channel. Never knew a British woman heard his final words. Sarah Winters dies in 2009. Age 97. The obituary mentions her work at Cambridge. Her wartime service in signals intelligence. It doesn't mention the voices, the nightmares, the weight she carried for 65 years. Her daughter finds notebooks in the attic, filled with names, German names, tank commanders, radio operators, men her mother listened to die. She burns them, as requested in the will. Some secrets should stay buried. And in those 30 seconds of intercepted transmission, a young German officer's last words, bouncing through the sky, landing in enemy hands, you glimpse the cruel poetry of modern war, where your voice can betray you, where physics is the informant, where the air itself turns against you. The Allies won Normandy for 1,000 reasons. Phantom A was just one thread in the tapestry. But for 29 days in summer 1944, they possessed something almost magical. They heard the future. before it arrived. And that impossible advantage, that glitch in the fabric of electromagnetic reality, changed everything. But here's the final twist, the one that makes historians pause, the one that rewrites the entire narrative. In 2015, a researcher at the German Federal Archives discovers something extraordinary. A memo, dated May 1944, stamped Geheim Kommandosake, Secret Command Matter. It's from the Wehrmacht Signals Intelligence Division, addressed to Panzer Group West Command. Subject, anomalous radio propagation, exploitation potential. The researcher's hands shake as he reads, because the memo describes the exact same atmospheric phenomenon, the skywave skip, the propagation windows, but it's written by German engineers, 4 German commanders. They knew. The memo outlines a plan, Operation Horsestorm. Listening Storm. Use the same atmospheric conditions to intercept Allied radio traffic. British tank coordination. American artillery fire commands. Canadian infantry movements. The plan was approved. Resources allocated. Listening stations prepared. But it was never fully implemented. Why? Because the German Signals Intelligence Division was chronically understaffed, overwhelmed by the Eastern Front, focused on Soviet radio traffic. The Western Front, low priority, until it wasn't. By the time they could divert resources to Operation Horsestorm, the Allies had already launched Phantom A. The race was won by the side that moved first. So here's the truth that nobody knew for 70 years. It wasn't just Allied ingenuity. It wasn't just British luck. It was timing, priority, resource allocation. Both sides discovered the same exploit. Both sides had the same idea. The Allies just executed faster. And in that narrow window, those 29 days between British implementation and German countermeasures, the war tilted. Not because of superior intelligence, not because of better technology, because someone acted first. The researcher publishes his findings. The memo goes into academic journals. Military historians debate the implications. But the veterans are gone now. Sarah Winters, James Calloway, Klaus Hartmann. The voices in the static have finally gone silent. All that remains are the transcripts, the frequency logs, the fading echoes of men who spoke into radios 70 years ago, never knowing their words would travel through time as well as space, never knowing they'd become ghosts in more ways than one. And somewhere, in an archive in Kew, London, there's a file, labeled Operation Phantom Ear, Final Assessment. Inside, a handwritten note from Field Marshal Montgomery. In war, the advantage goes not to the strongest, but to the quickest. We heard them before they heard us. That's all that mattered. Below it, someone, probably Major Harding, added a single line in pencil. And they never knew the sky was listening.